welcome everybody. Today's topic is going to be changing the narrative and terming a rent power analysis, which is something that, Bruce and I had done, 20 plus years ago. And I want to give everybody a moment to get on the call. And while we're doing that, if you notice that our team from Finance of America is now rebranded as Supreme Lending, and I want to welcome them to their new company. And I would like Bruce to talk a minute or two about, A, his exciting move, and B, what's happening in the marketplace. So Bruce, do you want to do a sound check and take it over for 5 minutes?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I hear you perfect.
Cool. Great. Yeah, I'm not so sure. It's been a heck of a month for us. We, as many people have probably heard, Finance of America, one of the top 10 lenders in the country, decided to get added to the retail mortgage space, which was something we were aware of a little bit early on, or at least I was aware of a little bit early on. And, fortunately for us, we did our diligence, and the entire company was able to land on its feet over at different entities and what have you. And we elected to join Supreme Lending, which I know I heard from Fazia has a stellar reputation down there in Florida. We're excited about joining them. They're one of the top 20 lenders in the country. They have about 480 branches nationwide and almost 3,000 employees. They're privately owned, really good company, a lot of great products. They allowed us to take our entire group. So for us, it's pretty much like changing the name on the door, if you will. But a lot of good things available to us to hopefully help you with some business, even a little bit differently than we have in the past. They have some interesting products. They have 100% financing products. They have some pretty cool products, and pricing and things of that nature, and the service aspect of things and what we do. That's of course going to all remain the same. But we're pretty excited to be with them, and it's been a little difficult. So for those of you that felt we were a little out of pocket for the past few weeks or so, you're right. So we apologize for that. It's I never thought of myself as old and someone that doesn't like change. But I will tell you that I can relate to people that go through that now. Even just something as simple as running a credit report when you used to do it in a certain way is a little bit different. But we are on our feet now, and the gang has kind of got their rhythm, and we have a few transactions in already approved, getting ready to close, and some of them for your group, of course. So we're excited. So our contact information, we're going to be getting in touch with you guys all individually as well through marketing to let you know what our numbers are. But cell phones are all the same, and our physical locations are all the same, although we're in the middle of switching over licensing and what have you. But, we're ready to go, and we look forward to continuing the relationship. We appreciate all your guys' support, as always. So we're excited. As far as what's going on with the market, mortgage rates have actually started to come down a little bit this week. So some of the things that the Fed has been doing is starting to work. It depends how you look at it. Starting to work in terms of allowing mortgage rates to drop a little bit. The things that are looked at to see if inflation is starting to become tamed or are starting to kind of show themselves. So, unemployment's starting to, everything's starting to kind of change a little bit. So I think we're going to see rates probably slow down a little bit in terms of these crazy increases. Even with the Fed increasing their short-term rate policy, I think you're going to see mortgage rates slow down a little bit with increasing. And once inflation, as we were talking about from the beginning, once inflation starts to get under control a little bit, the biggest thing that you look at right now is the CPE today, which is the consumer. Basically, it's the personal consumption report, PCE, right? So that's how much money and what percentage of things the consumers are using and purchasing and using up and things of that nature. And you're starting to see that slow down. Even though it's up a little bit today, it was 4.9, I think it's like 5.2. Once that number starts to slow down, once inflation starts to kick into control, you could see rates start to come down a little bit. We've already seen the 10-year drop this week, and mortgage rates are finally getting back under, for the most part, under 7.5% again, which is good because they were a little over that for a while. They were almost 8. The other thing I want to mention, which is kind of neat, or rather pretty important, I got my note here. Hold on. You know what? I'm going to hold off on that because the market just responded poorly There's something that came out at 8:30 that kind of changed that. It did look like we were going to see a little bit of a run today, but it looks like that may not happen. So anyway, that interest rates seem to be doing pretty well. You will start to see something happening, which is kind of good. For a while there, and I was talking to Rob earlier, you know, a lot of agents and a lot of buyers were a little upset because there really were, in certain programs, there weren't 0-point mortgage options available. I don't know if anybody's heard that. What was happening on FHA and even in the world of mortgage-backed securities, the higher coupons weren't really available. And what I mean by that is the higher interest rates weren't available, of fear of the fact that, you know, if they sell a rate too high with no points, it would just simply refinance out when rates come down. So FHA had a little run there where you weren't really able to do 0-point loans for a little bit of time. And that's kind of gone away, which is good too, with the rates dropping a little bit. So, yeah, that's what's going on. I'm still kind of scrambling a little bit. I'm not back to my normal self with paying attention to the markets, if I'm being honest, but I started to look at them closely again the past few days, and that's kind of looks like where we're at right now.
So Bruce, how bad of a run is it looking this morning?
You know, it's funny. The PCE came in what was expected. See, the markets, I don't know, man. I'm no expert when it comes to markets, but usually the initial reaction isn't always the long-term reaction for the rest of the day. It doesn't look horrible at all. It's really not going to be a big difference from yesterday. You know, the yields around the 10-year, for those, the thing that most people look at is right a little over 4, which is pretty much where we started. It was a little under 4 yesterday, but we'll be fine. Rates are going to be okay. I think as they continue to do what they do, and if they continue to raise interest rates, you're going to see some, you know, obviously some other things get hurt, like the stock market, maybe the housing market might feel a little bit, but you're going to see mortgage rates start to come down once inflation gets under control.
And Bruce, can you just reiterate, because sometimes I'm an observer in the office and clients will talk to our agents about, hey, you know, I see the bond market, the 10-year yield, and I'm not sure that everybody is trained on what that means. And I don't want anybody to be an expert, but I want them to understand maybe what their clients are talking about.
So explain what, Rob, so I understand what.
So this is going to be mortgage finance for the real estate profession, where you're looking at, you're in essence predicting, you know, what the interest rates are going to do today based upon what the financial markets are doing. And, you know, from, 30 years ago when banks used to sit in the board office and change their interest rate once a week or even once a day, now the markets change automatically, just like a stock trades. And everybody that I know that's a serious lender trades off of what we call the secondary market. And, I don't know that there are many portfolio lenders that don't change their rates virtually, immediate with the markets. Like if you wanted to buy a share of Amazon stock yesterday at 110, and now today it hadn't missed its earnings, it's at $97. You can't go and sell it at yesterday's price. The same is true with the mortgage market, right? You're following a secondary market and pricing based off of activities that go on beyond the mortgage industry.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I've always found to be real simple, just when I talk to clients, and there are exceptions to this rule, but just remember, mortgages are bonds, right? So bonds are usually invested in, they're more conservative by nature, and they're usually invested in the opposite of stocks, if you will, right? They usually have something, they usually have a little more security to them and a little bit less of return. So what happens is negative economic news is usually good for the bond market. Negative economic news is usually good because what it does is it allows the money to flow out of the stock market and all these other vehicles that could be invested. It allows it to flow into the bonds, which is really the long-term debt. The mortgage bonds are 30-year debt, 30-year notes. So, the mortgage market has a direct correlation to what happens in the stock market and the economy, because it's really what the return is going to be long-term. If investors invest in giving you money, or a loan, if you will. So it's a bond. So the best thing I could say is that usually it works adverse to the stock market, not always, but usually, it is, people will usually pull out of riskier investments and go into more conservative investments, which is what bonds are supposed to be. So typically what I usually tell agents is, you follow the 10-year treasury. That's the easiest thing you can look at. There is a mortgage-backed security treasury, different coupons you can look at, but for the most part, you follow the 10-year treasury. That's kind of the closest indicator. And as you see things, when inflation is cranking and everything's hot, mortgage rates are going to do bad, because what happens is, and I've talked about this a few times, is mortgages are trying to determine what the return should be over a 30-year period. Well, how the heck can they determine what the return is going to be over a 30-year period to an investor if they don't even know what the heck gas prices are going to be or home prices are going to be over the next couple of years, because inflation's going so high? So really what it is that's how the markets and the economy impact it. But for the most part, it's a bond, and it does fall into to the economic conditions that are out there. But again, there's exceptions to the rules. We had the pandemic when the Fed was buying mortgage-backed securities. We have when Feds really try to push interest rates lower. It could sometimes help, even though typically raising them could also sometimes help. There's exceptions, but that's probably the simplest way to look at it, is just, when there's you could pretty much see mortgage rates come down because they want lending to be a little more freed up when there's negative economic news. It's too much to explain. I don't know if that's what you're looking for. It's so hard to kind of explain it, but that's the simple piece.
Right. And Bruce, did you touch on why like the 0 point rates are challenging a little bit now? And then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I did. Maybe before you hopped on, I did it. So when you trade, specifically in the FHA market, usually when these mortgages are traded, there's coupons, there's a range of rate, like maybe from 6.5 to 7, or from 7.5 to 8. You can even have ranges from 7 to 8, but for the most part, there's different coupons available. And what happens, sometimes the markets are a little afraid to open up a new higher coupon because they're concerned about nobody's going to want to buy it or fill it, because obviously if they fill in a coupon too high, as soon as the refinance option becomes available, it's not going to have any value. People are going to refinance out of it. So you did have a period of time there that's been over the past few weeks where you've seen some of the products like FHA loans. I mean, there was a couple of weeks when we had FHA loans, we could only do them with 1.5 points. It was crazy. We couldn't even get a 0 point price. So that seems to be going away a little bit, though, with the rates dropping. So that seems to be gone the past couple of weeks.
And there's also a camp of experts, and you can find experts predicting both ways, but there are people predicting that by the end of next year, beginning of 2024, that we'll be back in the 5s and maybe even the low 5s. And I think you had come across some of that data as well, right, Bruce?
Let's hope, right? Yeah, we all hope.
Look, I am not warranting, I am not saying this is my opinion. I'm just saying that there are people out there with data believing that, the worst of inflation may be behind us, and that we may be seeing, unfortunately, we may be seeing higher unemployment. I've been seeing some companies making some significant job cuts, especially in the technology fields, and financial services have made some cuts, and that's going to put a damper on inflation. So anyway, yeah,
no, and there's no question. I mean, but I will say the biggest thing is once inflation gets under control, mortgage rates will come down. It's just a matter of when that's going to happen. I mean, let me rephrase that. Never in our country's history since 1972, when we've gone through something like this, did they not come down. So they always do come down. It's just a matter of how long the storm's going to go on. And I think there's some different wrinkles to it. The one thing I can tell you, which was interesting news that came out yesterday, is, it comes out every month, but there's the 30-day delinquencies, 90-day delinquencies, and foreclosures are all at all-time lows. So people are performing on all of these mortgage-backed securities, which helps the housing market and helps everything. When you compare it to what people are paying in rent and everything else, it's still the good news is that there doesn't seem to be that could always play a big role as well if there's performance issues as well. So things seem to be, once inflation's under control, I think you'll see rates come down. We do believe, I don't want to say we believe, I actually thought they'd be down by the end of the year, getting into the 6s, and I was wrong. So I'm a little concerned, or a little afraid to take too strong a position, but they really should come down pretty nicely once inflation gets under control, no question.
Well, thank you, Bruce. What I want to talk about today is I want to talk about rebranding a conversation that's probably existed since, before I was born, which is like the rent to purchase analysis. And, I want to have a definition for it. And what I want to call it is the rent power analysis. And what that is doing is it's going to be a program where we compare the renting of a property to the buying of a property. Can you hold on a second? Can you turn the music down? Yeah, the renting of a property to the buying of a property. And I know we have a lot of smart folks on here, and all of our mortgage lenders are prohibited from answering these questions at this point. But what's on the ledger side for somebody to buy a property versus rent a property? If you want to just, tell me some of the benefits. So I hear a tax benefit here. Everybody must know this. Carlos, you know.
Equity.
What's the benefit of buying versus renting?
You'll know that you have the same payment for 30 years.
Okay, that doesn't sound like Carlos. Who was that?
Oh, Eunice.
Payment, Eunice, thank you.
You know,
Carlos, I
that's
was
not
gonna
gonna
say,
go up and down.
They're building equity.
building equity.
Yeah,
Own something at the end of everything instead of just walking away.
Ownership.
Firing your landlord?
yeah, making the landlord rich.
The most guarantee that you'll make a profit on anything that you own.
Quality of life, having a
Okay.
dog.
Okay, Maggie says a hedge against inflation. And I think Angie, did you say dog?
Yeah, like, one of the reasons I moved was, my landlord wouldn't allow me to have pets, and I love pets. So,
Well, how about we call it home freedom, right? Because you can make your own decisions. Where
Right.
if you want to go and paint your bedroom pink or green, what do you have to do? Call the landlord, ask for permission, right?
yes, I called it quality of life.
Okay, quality of life.
Long-term net wealth and retirement options.
Learning to be responsible, not just a tenant.
You said, what's that, Pavla?
To be responsible to, how the tenants are, the mentality. They want the landlord to fix something. So learning to be responsible for your home instead of calling the landlord and thinking it's somebody else. So be a good example to your kids that it's your home you take care of. Be responsible for your home.
I mean, you spin that away, and I think, like, if you have a landlord that's not making repairs, you don't have anybody to point the finger at. It's all of our responsibility when we we make the decision for home ownership. And I think there's a lot more than this. So we have a tax benefit, we have fixed payment, we have building equity. Now, we also have building wealth. So how do you build equity in a home?
A sense of pride and security.
Pride and security. So how do you said appreciation. How else do you build equity? Amortization, right? When you pay rent, where does that money go? It goes to pay the landlord's mortgage down, right? When you make a mortgage payment, although if you have a mortgage, you might say, wow, that's not a whole lot going to my principal, but it is paying down the principal balance, and your prices should be going up. Let me mute it. Okay, so if you want to talk, just unmute yourself. There's one thing that we didn't talk about here, which is, who is familiar with how an appraisal is done? And I'm going to ask the real estate agent before we go to the lenders. How is an appraisal done?
I know. This is Greg.
So how do they look at what the value of a house is?
1/2 mile, beds and baths, and lot size. Strictly 1/2 mile. If they have to, they'll go over, but they are strict.
Okay, but like when they find a comp, right, within that, let's say they found 3 comps within the neighborhood, how do they make the comparison and come up with the value?
Has to be square footage, must be square footage of the house, of the lot.
So I think that there are 2 or 3 specific methods, and you're getting a little bit too detailed.
Recently sold.
So one method is the sales comparison, right?
The other one is replacement costs.
Right, versus replacement cost. And if it's an investment property, it's going to be cash flow. Now, let me ask you this question. For replacement costs, who's gone to the lumber yard to replace an appliance or to do any work on their home recently? Anybody? You have? How have those costs compared to where they were 3 years ago? So they've doubled, right? And now who tried to hire a professional to do work? Is that easy or hard? Hard, right? And the contractors have pricing power because there's a what kind of shortage? A labor shortage. Okay. And there is another component to it, right? Which is supply and demand, which is like economics 101. And what has the housing market notoriously done for over a decade? It's underbuilt compared to new housing formation, right? So if we have housing formation increasing and housing supply not keeping up, that creates something called scarcity. And is scarcity good when you're a homeowner and you have an asset? Okay, so I don't know, somebody did say, oh, hedge against inflation, right? Because inflation is good for people who own hard assets. Okay, there might be a temporary impact, right, because of affordability with people buying, but over time, if it costs more to replicate your home, is that going to be good for the price or bad for the price? And what doesn't exist now that existed in 2007 and 8? Who knows what's missing from our housing market that was around in 2007 and 8? Bad loans, right? You know, bad loans. And if you're around in 2008 and observing the market, what did people use their homes as?
ATMs.
As an ATM or a piggy bank, right? Everybody would get a home equity loan against their house, 110, 125%. And then when the market dropped a little bit, everybody's like, I will walk away from it. None of those things, none of those exist in this market, right? Are there anything else that we see in terms of on the positive side of buying a home versus renting a home? I'll give you one. Like, what if you have specific requirements? Like if you want to have like a 5-bedroom in a certain area, there aren't that many rentals that are, you know, of the caliber that you want, right? If you look at even paying the same amount, you probably can't get the same quality in a rental as you can get in something that you buy to live in. Would you all agree?
Yes.
Okay, so quality of housing stock available.
I'd say
You're stacking a lot on the buying side. Okay, you got to think about the rental side too, because rentals, you know, you don't have to pay insurances, no taxes.
All right, well, we're going to get to that, Ron. We're going to do one at a time. Then what we're going to do is
I saw you stacking everything on buying, but gotcha.
Right.
I would say that the security of knowing that you don't have to move at the landlord's whim. What if they decide to sell the house?
Control.
Not renew the lease. That's just true.
Control of your home, right?
Yes.
Control and responsibility. Like, I'm going to call it pets and paint, right? That's my own thing here. Control and responsibility is, you know, you can get a dog if you want. You can get a vicious dog if you want. You can get whatever you want when you're owning a house. You have to get permission when you're renting somebody else's house. And I think, did somebody say quality of life? Yeah, somebody said quality of life too, because, you know, if you're a tenant, you might be in the 2-family, or you might be somewhere where, you know, things are out of your control, like who's put on top of you, next to you, whatever.
Rob, in the house, you can also do extended, like, you could build on it. Like if you have yard space and you can add an addition to your house, you can add a studio to your house. You can do things in your house that represent your personality. Like in a rental, you're very limited on that.
So how about this? Like, who's ever been in a rental where you took pride of ownership and you done some repairs, you made it worth your home, you made it for your home, and you've invested in somebody else's asset. I was there.
Never.
But I think a lot of us have been like, if you're renting a place and you're going to live there for 2 years, you're not going to take it in its current condition. You're probably going to say, hey, I'll put a few dollars in and I'll enjoy it for 2 years. When you do that for your own property, it becomes your asset. It adds value to your particular home. When you do it to somebody else who's renting it to you, they come in, they say, well, that's a nice place. I'm going to charge you more for the improvements that you did. Right? All right. So Ron, I'm gonna ask final call here.
You got to add something about the equity though, Rob.
Yes.
Because it's probably the biggest thing. If you have a $50,000 and you put it into a vehicle that you get an 8% return on, say you put it into a mutual fund, right? And you get an 8% return, that 50,000 is going to be worth 54,000, right? At the end of the year. If you have a property, if you take that 50,000 and you leverage it by a $500,000 house, that $500,000 house appreciating just 2% a year is 10,000. So you're talking about a significant difference, a $4,000 return versus a $10,000 return. Now we've had times when houses have been 3 to 10 to 15% return, but even just looking at it in its most conservative way, right now you're getting nothing on your 50,000. So if you put your 50,000 away, it might be worth 51. If you put it into a house for $500,000, it's going to be $10,000 more. So that's the big piece of the equity. I know we all know that, but it's about the initial investment too. I mean, most people lay out 10 grand to get into a rental, or maybe 7 or 8.
So Bruce, that is an excellent observation from a brilliant financial mind. And I'm going to tell you that I do a lot of, podcast, YouTube reading. And I came across, and I mentioned this probably a year ago, there's an individual that I enjoyed reading his book called The Greatest Trade Ever, a guy by the name of John Paulson, not to be confused with Henry Paulson, who was the Treasury Secretary. But John Paulson is the individual that bet against mortgage-backed securities being real and made billions of dollars by betting millions against them. Now, John Paulson, when he was interviewed by David Rubenstein on his little show that he does on Bloomberg News, Rubenstein says, hey, John, you're brilliant. Can you tell me, like, if you had $100,000, what would you do? You know what he said? He said, I put 10% down on a house and I'd watch that house appreciate. And if it appreciates 5% a year, I have a 50% return. End of story. That's a financial guy. And Bruce, you just picked that same analysis up, and that's called housing leverage. Okay. And I think compared to any other financial asset, right? Who's seen a piece of paper, drop 80% in a year? Look at some of the stocks that went out there. I happen to be a victim of the Zillow downfall, right? I'm like waiting for it to come back. It ain't happening. So I think leverage, where you can not spend $1 million to buy $1 million house, you can spend $100,000 or $200,000 and you get 100% of the appreciation on the $1 million, not just your down payment. Anyway, and the last thing I'm going to put out here is you have free money. And what I mean by that is you can borrow from Bruce and any of our other lenders for less than the inflation rate. I'll repeat that. You can borrow for less than the inflation rate. All right. And any going once, going twice? And Rob, we're going to you soon, so I hope you got some good ones for renting, okay?
Well, Rob, just before you switch over to renting, I just wanted to reiterate something that you touched on, that my house with a beautiful yard and set off by itself cost me $2,000 a month. I can't rent anything close to what would be livable for me in this area for $2,000 a month. So it's just one more reason to buy.
Okay, and I want to embellish, or I want to build upon that, Robert, and I'm going to say that there's a good chance that when you bought that house, like, you felt you stretched yourself to the limit.
Absolutely.
And I think most people, when they buy their house, they feel they put their head on their pillow at night and say, oh my God, how am I going to make those payments? Like we just took this massive risk. And then a year or 2 years later, you're like, wow, that was the best decision I could have made. And I think that this repeats itself. And I think we take for granted the fact that, you know, that housing, you know, over time, you know, in a normal environment, and forget about this environment, you know, your opportunity to earn increases as well, right? Now with inflation and job shortages, people are making more money. So a good chance is if our client, our home buyer or our home renter decide that they want to make a move to a different job, are they going to be making more or less 99% of the time? They're going to be getting a pretty big raise, right? And another one is, you know, people spend more time at home now. You know, I think we've gotten accustomed to, you know, what do they call it? Flexible, what do they call it? Well, hybrid working, right? Where you do some work at home. So going once, going twice to you, Mr. Piccolo. You have to unmute yourself.
As far as the rentals are concerned, is that what we're talking about? Well, obviously buying a house is the best route. But you know, when you talk to a lot of renters out there, they say, well, we're going to rent. I said, why are you going to rent for it when you can, you know, you can buy? I mean, somebody's going to spend $34,000, $50,000 a year in rentals. All that money can go towards buying something. But on the other hand, they say, well, I don't have to pay taxes. I don't have to pay insurances. I don't have to worry about anything breaking. So the owner takes care of it. You know, there's a list of things that they mentioned that's why they want to rent rather than buy. So, but I always think that, you know, of course, when you own something and you have, you know, you're building equity, you're building, you know, a retirement, or you're building a future in financing and finances. So I always think it's a better route. But in any case, some people do rather rent. You know?
Well, I think renting is also a vehicle to saving money. I'm not sure about today's market, but when I first got out of college, I rented for about 5 years because it was just cheaper for me to do that and to be able to save for down payment. So I don't know about today's buyer if they're going to have the same luxury of having savings, because the rental market is just as stretched as the real estate market.
So let me give you something that I know in New Jersey is relevant. So Dominic, in your market, right? What would that 4-bedroom rental cost you if you give me? So a 4-bedroom rental would cost you $3,500, right? Now, if I came to rent something through an agency, how much money do I need to get into a $3,500 rental?
First loss in security.
So I need a month and a half security. I need a month's commission and the first month's rent, right? So I need that's 3.5 months times 3,500, right? So now when you do your analysis, right, if somebody wants that flex, that's $12,250, and that's 3.5 months of rent. Now, when you look at the rent versus buy, right, what number are we going to use for the rent?
3,500.
No.
Well, you can use that, but then you got to add back in the tax savings.
Well, what about the commission that you paid? Right? Aren't you going to add $300 onto that because you paid $3,500 in commission for that flexibility? Right. But well, I mean, if you do a 1-year lease and you're paying $3,500, right? You're going to make, when you do that comparison, cardinal sin number one. I hate to tell you, Dominic, but your rent for the first year is $3,800 a month. Okay, now that gives you $300 of extra buying power. And is there a lender on here that can tell us what does $300 of monthly payment get us in additional house?
Well, you have, I just figured out the amount exactly on what you were talking about. So that same example of 3,500, Rob, if you take out $8,000 a year for taxes and insurances, you're going to be at about a 376 loan amount. The tax savings is about $416 a month, and $416 is another 60 grand. So if you take the 376 and you add it to the 60, and you're talking about a $435,000 mortgage amount for about the same payment of what that 3,500 tax would be if your taxes were $8,000 a year. If your taxes are higher, then it could be off a little. So to your point, it's pretty close.
Bruce, did you use 35 or 3,800?
I used 35, but then I added the 416 for the tax savings because I don't know if I buy that whole $300 realtor shit. You know, it's just my opinion. I don't know.
That's who Bruce, it's mandatory.
Right. But Bruce,
sorry, just being honest.
No, but Bruce, if you and I owned a rental,
yeah,
in this environment, and it's coming due in February, are we going to be keeping the rent the same? Are we going to raise it?
Oh, okay, good point. All right, that's where you're coming up with the 3.
So the first year you're actually paying 300 extra, and then next year that's going to be going up. So I think I can buy into that.
I didn't realize that's what you're saying. Yeah, I was looking more for the tax savings. If you're taking your standard deduction of $16,000 a year, you still have about another $416 a month, you know, in tax savings. So, but either way, it comes out to like $435 in terms of loan amount, which.
And then if you took the interest, if you took how much principal do you pay back, Bruce, every month or every year?
It's kind of top heavy, not much.
Like 3,000, 5,000
on that loan amount. Let's see, 435.
Well, you're still assuming that people have to move, though. Like, it's some people that are in rentals. This is the problem. The people that are already in the rental that have been considering that got boxed out from the last year. Those are the people that still should buy, but they're already into their rental, so they don't need that additional 10,000 or whatever it is to put down. Like, so they may be saving or not. I mean, that's really, there's so many renters out there already in.
Right. So Ellen, I'm going to come back to that in a second because that's a very valid point. I want to
excellent point.
I want to close the loop here. So Bruce, what would the principal amount be that you pay down in a year?
We're talking about, you know, $2,000 leading up to maybe $5,000 a year over the first few years.
All right, so let's just say 3,000. That's $250 a month of savings. And if you put that back into the mortgage, it's probably going to get you closer to 500,000. Now, there's a lot of assumptions going on here. We're not even making any assumption about appreciation on this. Okay. So in terms of owning, Dominic, for a $500,000 budget, could you get something equivalent to a $3,500 rental or no? Huh? What would you get for 500?
3, 1.5.
So you get 3, 1.5. So basically, on the side of renting, you know, if you need to have a 4-bedroom house and you can't afford the price tag, then renting is a winner for that. If you have a time frame of, let's say, under 2 or 3 years that you might be moving, then renting is a winner, right? And I think, you know, we can't change the narrative based upon the facts of the person. Like, you know, if you're a doctor and you look at a patient, you can't take all the symptoms and come up with a different diagnosis because you need to do surgery this month, right? All right, hey, you know what? Surgeries are down here, Dominic. I think I need to replace your knee, even though it looks perfectly fine on the MRI. Okay, we don't do that. We don't do that. But you know what? Having certainty and having clarity, and when you're honest, do people not know that you care about them? And you're like, hey, now might not be the right time for you. But if you have enough conversations, will you find people that fall in that bucket? Absolutely. But what's happening right now is our narrative is being controlled by people who are making decisions based upon fear. Would you agree that people are afraid and fear? And what does fear mean? What's the acronym for fear? Does anybody know that?
False expectations appearing real. But that being said, all decisions are made. 90% of decisions
appearing real.
90% of decisions are based on fear anyway, whether in a good market or a bad market. That I'm sure.
Yes. So Ellen, to your point, where you're talking about people who are in a rental and don't have a motivation, yes, some will, some won't. So what? Right? Some will, some won't, so what? And then we just need to move on. So if somebody's renting, they don't have any motivation, you know, we can share with them honestly, you know, the rent power analysis, right? And part of that's going to be, you know, they might have a really nice landlord that's not raising their rent because they're a good tenant. Or they might have a corporate landlord that raises their rent based upon whatever they can extract out of you, right? We know both of those types of landlords. They might have a landlord that takes care of the property. They might have a landlord that doesn't do any repairs and they have to do everything themselves. I've seen both sides, folks. I've seen landlords that are so slow to move that tenants are like, I'm just going to do it because I live here and I don't want to fight with the landlord. I don't want to deduct it from the rent because they're going to sue me. They're just a rotten person. Okay, so there's no one size fits all with this, but we're having this conversation so that we can identify the people that need to take action and are frozen because of fear. Okay, and does anybody on this call think that in 3 years housing prices will be lower than they are today? And I want to be honest. Is anybody here?
No.
Anybody?
I think they're going to be lower next in 6 months.
Right, but how about in 3 years? Will it recover that and be more?
Yep.
It's hard to say.
I don't think so.
It's hard to say.
Depends how hard the fall is with all this crap going on. That's
Yeah,
all.
it's hard to say.
I listen to Bloomberg every day, and they're talking about keeping the rates.
So I want to go on the record here. There's 98 people, and there's 6 here. We have 1 out of 104 people that think in 3 years housing will be lower. I don't know that you can get more powerful consensus than that. And no disrespect to Greg, and maybe there's a couple people that didn't pipe in, but I think in 3 years, okay, we all feel that housing will be higher than it is today because there's not housing being built. We have inflation, right? Once everybody gets accustomed to, let's just say that the normalized interest rate becomes 7%. Everybody's going to be accepting of that. Everybody say, you know what, that's what the rate is. I'm going to buy. Right now, everybody's just in temporary sticker shock.
That has been the norm at some point.
Yeah, I mean, over time, 6 or 7 is the norm.
I'll tell you one thing. I think rents are going to be higher in 2 years, period. I don't see that going away. There's no, people need places to live. They're still building these giant things that are like they're knocking down the Paramus Park. They're going to build like 8,000 units or something ridiculous in the Paramus Park Mall parking lot. There's not enough housing for people. So rents will be going up. That's going to impact it.
See,
If people had good memories, we wouldn't have second children. The people's memories are short. And within 6 months, I mean, I bought in 03 and my rate was 6.25, 6.5. My bridge was 9. People buy in any market. I just think it's a nonsense argument.
Right. So, Ellen, I think what we need to do is we need to realize that we can't push people that don't belong buying to buying. You know, if we present the evidence and they're one of those people that feel like, you know, this housing market makes me nervous, right? There are people that, you know, keep their money in a passbook savings account because they don't want to take risk, right? And now over time, if you put all your money in a passbook account and somebody else put it in the stock market, there's going to be times when you bought and the market went down temporarily, but when you retire in 30 or 40 years, whose account would you rather have? Would you rather have the person that put all their savings into a passbook account or a 401k and diversified financial assets? No, I'm just giving you an example of something that's non-real estate, right? So real estate, you know, most people, and I challenge you to find people who are of significant wealth. Many of them are in business, but they made their real wealth by owning the real estate that they operated their business out of. Okay.
95%, I totally agree with you. Yep.
I have a financial advisor, and he said, I'm trying to remember what he said, but yes, he said the 3 best ways to create wealth are, one of them is owning the property that you run your business out of. Stock market is one of them, and then some of the building options. But that's what he always says to me. People that own the property that they run their business out of.
Yep. It's a great way to build wealth.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put this together and I'm going to share this with all of our lending partners. And I want us to have a honest message that we can go to our people, because let's just take a trip back in time, maybe 6 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago, right? How many offers were there on every house? How many offers were there on the 15, 20, 40? Okay, 15, 20, 40. Did everybody not want to buy a house? And when there were 40 offers, there were 39 unsatisfied people, right? Now, has the world changed so dramatically that, you know, people should be running away from it? You know, people are like, if there's only a way that I could actually not have to make an offer on a house and pay 100,000 more, waive all my contingencies, right? That was stressful. Folks, this is not that stressful. This really is not that stressful. And when they come to us and they want to ask us a question, not everybody needs a new knee. Not everybody belongs buying a house, but everybody deserves the dignity of a conversation with integrity about what's the benefits and the drawbacks. And if you're a cynic, okay, Google John Paulson, and it was with David Rubenstein. Watch his interview where David Rubenstein, who's he's the founder of the Carlyle Group, he's looking for some substantial financial investment, some plan to invest his money in. And the guy goes and puts a fat softball down the middle and says, I would buy a piece of real estate with 10% down and I would get appreciation on 100% of it. Think about that. It's a financial guy.
Here's something interesting too, to Alan's point, you know, the people sitting in the rental, and I'm sure you guys all spin this, you know, narrative is the new word they call it, but, you know, we're actually doing offers for people with down payment assistance programs now. When the hell's the last time we did that? 2 years ago, you had to have wave appraisal values, you had to have tons of liquidity, you had to fight over everybody else for all this. This is one of those markets where the folks that were forced into the rental situation now can get back in the market. And if they do wait, to your point, Rob, then all those things are going to be stacked up on top of each other again. They're going to be competing against those people again. I'm not saying it's enough to make it be different if they could rent a 4-bedroom versus buy a 3-1. But what I'm saying is that they need to understand that, to Alan's point, that, you know, the fear is always going to be there, but there are tangible things that can, in my opinion, that do offset that, which is you could get back in the market. And even if your mortgage payment is $500 more a month, because rates are high right now, if you pay $500 more a month for 2 years, that's 12 grand. And when rates come down, it would cost you a hell of a lot more than 12 grand more to buy that house. So you can always refinance and get that rate down again. So I just think that's worth keeping in the back of your head, you know?
Rob, going to something you said earlier and with Bruce right now, one of the biggest objections with renters is that they don't think that they have enough money to buy because they're not educated to know that there are some programs out there. And we all come across the people who say no, no, no. But if we find out it's because of money, you know, down here, South Florida, the starting home is about $350,000. Now we are getting FHA deals done regularly. There are assistance programs. They're coming out left and right. You're talking $12,500 as your FHA down payment. The difference in closing costs, now you can get sellers to contribute $3 or $4 grand. You can get some sort of assistance program. They're out there coming left and right. And even if they borrow or get a gift of $3,000 to $4,000, their tax refund at the end of next year will pay that back. And it's just a matter of showing them on paper that rental right now, if you got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in a decent neighborhood, it's $3,000 a month rent. It's 7.5% with $5,500 in taxes, $3,500 a year insurance. You're $3,112 a month. So you're literally $112 more a month to build equity and be able to get a house compared to the same price for renting where you get nothing.
And Scott brings up a really good point too. Sales concessions right now, gang. Remember when the markets are usually weak and buyers don't have money, we have a hard time appraising the houses out if the seller's paying closing costs. Right now, we don't have that. Values are still there. So getting a seller concession right now when the values are supported very easily and putting $10,000 into the mortgage to pay for closing costs, you literally could get somebody into a $500,000 home for like 15 grand if the seller pays 10 grand in closing costs.
So
Bruce, do you have, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ron, finish.
Bruce, do you have the, like what Scott was saying, because we have a buyer that's getting assistance through the county. And we've been waiting for it to come through. But do you have that program with this new company that you're in?
Yeah, we do. Actually, Supreme is pretty big. Fazia had shot me a message this morning that, you know, we have a really, really strong presence down in Florida, and we're in all the bond products. We're in all the down payment assistance products. We also have some national products, as I know a lot of your lending partners do, not to steamroll the show or whatever. But what I will tell you is that the point is that they're available again and people are receptive to them. I mean, you know, we couldn't even talk to, can you imagine if we sent over a pre-approval letter back last October saying, hey, guys putting 3% down, we got to wait for state of New Jersey for 4 months to approve his bond? People laugh us right out of it. It's ridiculous. And now we're able to get into those. So that I think that's something we just have to explain to folks. But yes, there are, and I don't think it should all be that there's 100% financing bonds, but the point is there are options that are worth dialogue, in my opinion, because if you have people in rentals that don't know it, when they get ready to get out of the rental, if things are different, they're going to, you know, there's some benefits right now. I'm not sure they, like to Rob's point, you know, you got to be there at least 2-3 years before they're going to outweigh the negatives. But I mean, if you're going to deal with a rental increase in a year, and then you're going to be fighting with everybody else, you're going to need more liquidity. That's a perfect buyer to be able to have a conversation. And we actually have a breakdown of buy versus rent that shows tax savings and appreciation and everything that we could send to any of you for any buyer. All we actually need is the MLS number. And we could put it right into our system and we could populate the whole thing and really help you out. So if you need to reach any of your, you know, whoever covers your offices for Supreme or whoever, just get in touch with us and we'll help you out with that.
I think every rental conversation has to, that's like one of the things that sets us apart, right? As expert agents is, you know, help me understand why you're choosing.
Let's push them into buying.
So I'm going to create, and I'm going to send it out as an attachment. Listen to me, I'm going to create and send this out before next week's mastermind. I'm going to send out a document of what we discussed here, the pros and the cons. And I want everybody to be okay and say, it's okay if it's not right for the person before me to buy now. Some will, some won't, so what, right? But we need to take the fear out of the process. Some things that we didn't talk about, which are transactional. Okay, if I go back in the time machine to a year ago, one of the first things I'm talking to Dominic about is, Dominic, how much of the appraisal are you going to waive? Right? Now, who's having those conversations now? Nobody. How much of the appraisal are you going to waive? Gone, right? Are you willing to waive all the inspection terms? Gone now. Okay, I would say that we should not be doing deals where we don't give our client the ability to do a home inspection. Instead of how about negotiating price and terms? There are 4 to 5 times the number of price reductions today than there were a year ago, if not 10 times the amount. So now we can negotiate price and terms. We might be able to negotiate $10,000 off the price. We get a home inspection, we get an appraisal contingency, and we might ask the seller to pay for our closing costs. And guess what? If they say no, we have 2 other houses to show them. Okay? I mean, we have, in my opinion, we have an obligation to the industry to be transparent, to be honest, and to keep the industry moving, because it is not healthy if the industry freezes up. Okay? If the financial markets freeze up, the credit markets freezes up, you know what happens? The government steps in and provides liquidity. Okay? We are the liquidity to this market. Okay? We need to be honest and say some will, some won't, so what? But there's a story.
Someone's waiting is the next part of that, Rob. Some will, some won't, so what? Someone's waiting. There's always somebody else that has to move, wants to move, needs to move, and move on. And like, don't try and convince them. And you know what? I feel like I don't want to be the expert. I'd rather pass it off to Mark or Bruce, or know enough to know to ask the questions, and then say you really need to talk to the experts and a lender. I don't want to be responsible for that. That's not my job.
Right, and to our lending partners, Bruce, and I don't know if Caitlin or any of our other lending partners are on, but if we can kind of have that same message, and the message has to have integrity. Okay, we will do nothing that doesn't have integrity. If it gets looked at and I don't feel comfortable doing it, I don't want anybody to do it. But I certainly don't want to let people not see the full story, right? And Bruce, if you have to do 3 pre-approvals, or your team has to do 3 approvals to get 2 deals, or three conversations to get 1 deal, are you guys up for that?
Only 3? Yeah, sign me up. 3 for 1, right? We're in.
Right, because,
3 for 1.
A year ago, you probably had to do 10.
20 for 1, please.
10 to get somebody that was able to buy a house. I'm being serious, folks. because they were
We're
getting out.
doing that anyway, Rob. We're doing that anyway. We have to have our numbers look like 16 people, 8 conversations, take 8 people out a month, and then hopefully 2 will buy. If that works, then those are great numbers. I don't need everybody. I don't want everybody.
And maybe, and I'm not the best person to do video, but maybe if we did a video about what it looked like to buy a year ago. The first question is, and I'm going to tell you something. The people that I'm seeing coming in the office that are looking at housing right now, they were in the market a year ago. They were unsuccessful a year ago. So they understand what it was like a year ago. They understand that the first question is, A, we need to make a decision today, Maggie. How much of the appraisal, like the consumers understand that if they've been in the market, right? Right. So now this is what we were waiting for. And now that we have it, we're letting the fear spook us, and we shouldn't. Okay. We should be looking at it from a different lens. And, I mean, I feel like I've done a disservice because I just talked about the high level. Hey, rent's going to go up. If interest rates go down, when you do your refinance, if interest rates go up, you're happy, right? So like all that is still true. That has to be on this list. But there's a whole nother tier of benefits that we need to share, and we need to move on if it doesn't work. And NJ Lender Team, Finance of America, I'm going to be getting you this information so that we kind of have a standardized way of going through that with them, right?
I just want to interject this. NJ Lenders and Jimmy Brown is Caitlin, those people, our team. And, look, we're all competitors. You guys are all competitors. But at the end of the day, you do have really good partners that have some tenure. We all know this stuff. To Ellen's point, Ellen talks to Mark a lot. Just have us talk to the people. We could get you that data. That's what we're here for. That's the value we bring to you guys. It's not just being able to close your loan. We have to bring you value to help you sell more houses too. So if we need to help you shake the trees, I know we have people that don't even like shaking trees, loving to shake trees right now. So, whatever we got to do. So please really encourage. I know I encourage on behalf of Jimmy Brown and his group too. Just encourage, get us, call us. We'll be glad to talk to these people and give them paperwork. You don't have to know it all. We can, and we don't know it all either, but between the two of us, we can figure out a lot of it.
Just to echo Bruce, same, like we're a resource, you know what I mean? Like we're just here. There's so many times, whether it's like a text or like a quick call, stuff like that. Like, believe me, Bruce and we've all had many calls like this. So just to bounce anything.
And it's any time of day of the week. It doesn't matter. We're here. You have a customer call us at 9:30 at night, Sunday, Saturday, it doesn't matter. We're here.
So I'm gonna just kind of close that circle and just say, look, our lending partners are not here just because that they help us financially to grow as a business, but because I can't tell you the last time I received a complaint from anybody that's a financial partner of ours. When Maggie's clapping, that's it, because when they get the transaction, we don't get complaints. Okay, and I stand behind it. Like, I know that it's going to be able to close on time. I know that they're going to have integrity, that they're not going to say the rate is this, and then when they go to the closing table, it's 3/8 higher. So I want to thank you, and I see Frank's on camera here. Frank Delpeche, welcome to Supreme Lending. Frank, what is it if you got a seller to pay the closing costs? What would the down payment be on a $450 purchase price on FHA?
$450 purchase price?
Yeah, if the seller paid all the closing costs as part of the terms.
Frank's in charge of our speed down payment calculations here at Supreme Lending.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, I had something come up this week that I just wanted to share because, the appreciation has been so much over the last year. Sometimes you might get a house where it's appreciating way higher and you might be able to use that extra money on the appraisal. The seller's getting what they want and use it to buy down a rate or for closing costs back to the buyers, because everybody's kind of in a win-win. And I had one that appraised like $20,000 over the asking for a tiny little house in Denville. So,
and you could also do that, Ellen, after the fact too, believe it or not. So if you have the house appraised, Yeah, even, with us, NJ lenders, your preferred partners,
Yeah.
if you have a house that appraises out, you can always do an addendum to increase the contract and have it cover closing costs. So many people don't want to do that, but you
Yeah,
can even.
no, that's what I was saying. That's exactly what I was saying, Bruce.
Hey,
Like,
Bruce?
I had that a year and a half ago, and it was very helpful. We converted a loan from conventional to FHA, and then they used the money. There was like a $20,000 gap, and they used the money for a buy down and prepay the insurance, and it really worked out well for them. Their monthly is way lower than it would have been.
Hey,
So,
Bruce.
Flexibility. What is the, Frank, what's the total down payment if the seller pays the closing cost? What would that be?
So if you have a $450,000 purchase price and you're going to put 3.5% down, 434 would be the loan amount. So 16,000 would be the down payment. But remember, FHA, you're allowed up to 6% seller concession.
Right. So
if your closing costs are 13,000, I mean, you can have your closing costs
right.
covered.
So somebody could buy a $450,000 house if they have the right advice from the lender and the agent for 16,000, and it would cost you 12,250 to do a $3,500 rental. How many people know that? I think,
Can you put that out in a spread, like just in a sheet of PDF so that we can carry that around? I think that's super important to have, at that level, and also even at a higher level. I mean, nobody says at a $700,000 or an $800,000 house, which is where I like to be, that you can't do the same thing and then double it and it still works out better.
has anybody on this call done a rental for 5,000?
Yes.
Has anybody done a rental for more than 6,000? Residential.
Yes.
We just processed a rental for 14,000.
That's nuts.
I'll rent my house for 14,000. Anybody
we-
wants to rent my house for 14 grand, let me know. You can
It's
have
probably
it. I'll rent
low.
this all out.
Okay, so this, Ellen, I want to thank you. This applies to like all the thresholds, right? Because we have people paying big rents, okay? So I will put together a document, work with Fred and our marketing team to get something together by next week, and our lenders. And I just want everybody to have an honest discussion with our clients. And I want us to go back and remember a year ago, we were hoping that there would be inventory and there weren't 27 offers on every house. And now that we have that, don't let us squander this opportunity. Let our competition forget about that pain from a year ago, okay? And I also want to say, I think we have, a unbeatable culture here, and we have so much talent. I don't know if this person's on, but I was doing a team meeting and we had somebody that was passionate about fitness. I connected them with somebody else, and next thing you know, one of our agents did a video and a post. They were like springing backwards, like doing a backstand and talking about how they bend over backwards and put their best foot forward for their clients, blending fitness and the passion of real estate together. We have such a great team, and this is a collaboration of all these things that you put together here to help us make a better organization.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm live?
Robert?
Hello?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rob.
I'd like to share a quick story that happened 20 minutes ago, which is kind of ironic. I think everybody will get a kick out of it, especially, is Nilay on the line?
She's not, but she's all set and ready to go, Rob. Go ahead.
Oh, never mind. I'll call her later about this. Nilay?
All right, goodbye.
Go ahead.
All right. So anyway, ironic thing is, last week I realized that this year I got to find creative ways to find new clients, because I do depend on Zillow a lot, and I don't think it's going to be what it was. So I started working. This ends with a funny story. I started working on a letter for divorce lawyers. All right. 20 minutes ago, I'm listening to this and I'm looking at my text. I get a text from a client that I closed a house on with Nilay 6 weeks ago on a 203K. We're almost finished. And she just said, "Hey, Rob, are you interested? Our marriage is not working out. How quick can you actually get a house up for sale?" 20 minutes ago. And I just sold them the house. They closed like less than 2 months ago.
So it's a true. Yeah.
Did they finish their 203K renovations? Am I gonna get a phone call, Rob? What the hell's going on? Wait a minute.
Well, I've been going by the house, checking on it. They're
I'm
probably
always teasing. I'm always teasing.
Hold on. I don't want anybody getting a bad taste for Rob. Rob is like the best person. I just think Rob is just saying that there's a parallel between the market he was after and then one of his past clients being in that same unfortunate situation. And you know what? When somebody is in an unfortunate situation, it does us no good if we abandon them. Like, we have to help out with whatever we can to solve that problem. So don't think Rob, it's not funny that way. It's just ironic because Rob was going to solicit divorce attorneys, then one of his clients is one of those candidates.
Well,
So,
I got to be honest with you. They shouldn't be married. No, I spent a lot of time with them. They were always fighting. And the husband,
Dr. Phil, I mean, Rob
we're running out of
Living.
time.
What?
I think the time has come for us to conclude. Hey, I just want to say, look, I
my
find
God.
this to be incredibly valuable, and you guys triple the amount of content from your contribution than I had in advance of doing this. So I can't thank you enough. I hope you found some value. I hope we understand that, you know, this is not just a job, that we have a moral obligation to get the message across honestly, to let people make the right decisions, and that fear is false evidence appearing real. And that's not part of our culture or our vocabulary. Okay. And, you know, we're not going to do something that's not in the client's best interest to make money, but we're certainly not going to let the client hear the full story before they make a decision. And the last thing I'll also mention is, when I was in the lending side, sometimes people say they can't afford to buy it. They see the difference. And guess what? You know, their grandmother's like, oh, I have an inheritance. I really want to see you buy a house, or their parents, or they come up with money because there is people who own homes, they know, and they want their kids to have that opportunity. You know, if you're a parent, you want your child to have a home to live in, right? That's you want them to go to college, you want them to have a house. And parents will, maybe they don't want them living at home, but parents see that value, and oftentimes people will find a way to come up with money if the opportunity is far significantly better than their other reality. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to leave it with that. Thank you for showing up.